Who is Sonia Sotomayor? By Megan Stine. Chapters 2 and 3. Chapter 2. High School Hopes and Dreams. Sonia was lonely all that summer. With nothing much to do, she turned to books. She spent hours reading in the library. Her favorite books were Nancy Drew mysteries. Sonia loved how Nancy Drew could solve crimes and catch bad guys. Sonia knew that she might not live very long. Still, she thought a lot about the future. She was determined to make the most of the time she had. She wanted an important career. Maybe she could solve crimes like Nancy Drew or Perry Mason. Perry Mason was a hit TV show when Sonia was young. It was about a clever lawyer who defended innocent people accused of murder. Every week, Perry Mason would win a case in court. If she wanted to be a lawyer one day, Sonia knew she'd have to study hard and get good grades. Her mother had taught Sonia the importance of learning. Even though they were poor, Selena bought a set of encyclopedias for their home. The thick, leather-bound books were the kind that most people only saw in libraries. Sonia paged through a different volume each day, learning as much as she could. School became easier after Sonia's father died. The nuns were kinder to Sonia now, and Selena started speaking English at home. That helped a lot. Sonia also learned that asking for help was a great way to succeed. One day, she asked one of the smartest girls in school for help. The girl gave Sonia some study tips. After that, Sonia got better grades. By the time Sonia was ready to start high school, her Bronx neighborhood had become a rough place. It was full of drug dealers and gangs. So Selena moved the family to a safer part of the Bronx. Their new apartment was near Cardinal Spellman High School. That's where Sonia started 9th grade. When Sonia was first at Cardinal Spellman, the girls and boys did not have classes together. They only saw one another at lunch. Still, Sonia made plenty of friends. She also had a boyfriend named Kevin Noonan. Kevin had blue-gray eyes and curly light brown hair. He was smart and interesting. He made Sonia feel special. On their first date, Kevin took Sonia to a fancy part of Manhattan. It was only a subway ride away from the Bronx, but as Sonia wrote later, it seemed like a whole different world. After that first date, Sonia and Kevin became a couple. He spent as much time as he could at Sonia's house. Sonia had other good friends at school, too. Ken Moy was a year older than Sonia. She met him when she joined a club where students had to make speeches. Ken coached her on how to speak in front of an audience. Sonia knew that would help her become a lawyer, just like Perry Mason. All through high school, Sonia studied hard. She also worked at Prospect Hospital. Junior worked as well. He had 2 jobs. They both had to help out because the family was so poor. With so little money, Sonia wasn't sure how she would ever pay for college. Then, one day, when Sonia was a senior, her friend Ken Moy called. Ken was now at Princeton University. Princeton was in the Ivy League, a small group of top schools in the country. Ken gave Sonia some advice. Try for the Ivy League, he said. It might be hard for Sonia to fit in, especially being poor and Hispanic, but he said an Ivy League education would change her life forever. Sonia decided to take Kevin's advice. She applied to 3 Ivy League schools, Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. She had no idea how tough it was to get into these schools, but guess what? She was accepted at all 3. After visiting each, Sonia decided to follow in Ken Moy's footsteps. She would go to Princeton. The college was in New Jersey, only about an hour and a half from New York City. But for Sonia, Princeton was completely new and different, like nowhere she'd ever been before. Chapter 3. Princeton. At Princeton, many of the students came from rich families. Most were white. By college, many had traveled all over the world. They went skiing, owned fancy cars, and wore expensive clothes. They felt right at home on the beautiful college campus, with its fancy wood-paneled dining halls and old stone buildings. But Princeton wanted more students from different backgrounds. They were trying to bring in smart, hard-working students like Sonia Sotomayor. It was a part of a program called Affirmative Action. Affirmative Action. Affirmative Action is a program that helps minorities get ahead in school and find work. It started in the United States in the 1960s. It was a way to make up for racial discrimination. If two people applied for a job, most of the time the white person would be chosen over the black one. Affirmative action tried to change that. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy signed a law that required anyone working for the government to take positive action, affirmative action, to make sure minorities could get government jobs. When minorities applied for a job or applied for college, they were given extra consideration because they were in a minority. That way, people who had not been as lucky growing up were given a better chance to succeed. Princeton gave Sonia a full scholarship. That meant she didn't have to pay for school. Without the scholarship, she could never have afforded to be at Princeton. Sonia has said many times over the years that she was grateful for affirmative action. It helped her get into a top school and achieve her dreams. Soon enough, Sonia had a group of friends. Her roommate, Dolores, was Mexican-American. They hung out together on campus at the Third World Center. It was a center for minority students. Most of the people Sonia met there were interested in politics and justice. They wanted to make the world a better place. Years later, First Lady Michelle Obama would go to Princeton. She spent much of her time at the Third World Center, too. Sonia didn't get good grades at first. To her surprise, she got a C on the first paper she wrote for a history class. So she did what she had done before. She asked for help. Her professor explained how to write more clearly and put forth a convincing argument on paper. Other professors helped too. They told her that she was mixing Spanish grammar into English sentences. So in the summer after her freshman year, Sonia bought some English grammar books. She studied them hard. After that, her grades improved. Meanwhile, Sonia and Kevin were still a couple. Kevin had gone off to a different college. He came to visit Sonia on weekends. Even though she was getting good grades now, Sonia didn't always feel like she fit in. It was hard being one of only a handful of Hispanics on campus. Feeling like an outsider made Sonia determined to change things at Princeton. One thing Sonia noticed was that Princeton had no Hispanic professors, not one. Even the Spanish classes weren't taught by Hispanic people. She and her friends from the Third World Center wrote letters to the people in charge of Princeton. Then she wrote to the U.S. government. She sent in a complaint. Her complaint was that Princeton was being unfair to minorities. It worked. After that, Princeton hired a Hispanic person for an important job as Assistant Dean of Student Affairs. By the time Sonia was ready to graduate, she was known as a leader, someone who took charge, and her grades were excellent. Yet, as graduation grew closer, Sonia realized she still had a lot to learn. One day, Sonia walked into her dorm room. As she explained years later in the book about her life, Sonia found her friend Felice sitting there. Felice looked embarrassed. She had seen a letter in Sonia's wastebasket. It was an invitation to join a very special club called Phi Beta Kappa. The club was only for the very top students. At Princeton, that meant the best of the best. Sonia had thrown the letter away because she had never heard of Phi Beta Kappa. Sonia took Felice's advice. She answered the invitation and got a Phi Beta Kappa key, a symbol of the club's honor. In June of 1976, Sonia graduated from Princeton. Besides Phi Beta Kappa, she received other honors as well. She was the co-winner of the Pine Prize, the highest award a senior at Princeton could receive. Finishing college was really just the start of her education, however. Sonia realized she would keep on learning for the rest of her life.